Hi, Russ here from UFO Paranormal TV, and tonight's guest is Robin McRae. Hi, Robin. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm good. How are you today?
Oh, don't ask. Yeah, not too bad. A lot better than a lot of people, but
Yeah,
not too bad. How's yourself?
I'm doing good. I woke up with this stupid cold, so I apologize. My voice isn't as good as it normally is.
Oh, I know all about that. I know all about that. So anyway, I was talking originally to your husband.
Yeah,
Um, I've been friends a while now, and they were telling me about him, and he said you really need to speak to my wife.
yeah,
So, and I had a little chat, and I says, "Don't tell me anymore. This is amazing. I need to get you on my show." So
yeah.
anyway,
Poor
you're on the
guy.
show.
Poor guy. He gets drugged through the ringer with me, I think,
Well, we
whether he
all
wants
do.
it or
We
not.
all do. But sort of like God loves a trier. They can try. They can. They're not debunkers because debunkers have got a ground to sort of like to take away what you're saying. So we're not
Yeah,
talking about debunkers. What we're usually talking about are haters. That is
yeah,
people for whatever reason. And sometimes it's people in the subject that have never had anything happen to them. And there's not a hope in hell's chance that they ever will have anything happen to them.
no,
And they're so annoyed that we're the chosen few that
yeah. I
they've
think
got to,
people they
yeah, they've
just
got to
what
react.
they can't understand because they can't experience it or they haven't experienced it. They've got to trash it, and it's
And
just
they never will. They
it's
never
just
will.
no, it's and I'm okay. Like, whatever they want to do, they can do. I get a lot of it because of the research field that I'm in that I never even tried to get in. I was just kind of fell into it. And I just tell
Yeah.
everybody the same thing. I can share my experiences. What you do with that information is all on you, but I'm not going to lie about it. To make it
No.
easier for everybody. We've got it. The powers that be have everything into this nice little square box that it's all supposed to be a certain way. And that was never the reality or the truth to begin with.
That's right. And of course, there's people that I've been told a few strange things about people in the subject that have
Hmm.
been paid by the government. And when I look at the actual, well, when I call them people, I look at lowlifes, and I
Yeah.
think, who would pay such lowlife scum money? But of course, the government pay themselves, so they're lowlife scum as well. So
Yeah.
of course they will. Anyway,
Yep.
I'll keep off of that. Otherwise, I can see the the podcast going disappearing like last time when I said something
I've
that offended the government and what have you. Sort of like
had
I
things
lost the
come to my
show.
door to give me warnings that were not human. And there was somebody with me at the time that saw it as well.
Wow. So where did all this start with you then, Robin?
Um, I was a very small child. My first abduction that I remember, I was 4. I mean, when I was there, they told me that they had taken me before. I have no memory of prior times. I remember, when I was there when I was 4. But the thing that always surprised me about it is I was a 4-year-old kid. If I hadn't been there before, I should have been afraid. I wasn't. I wasn't afraid at all. I felt very comfortable. I don't know, they had
Yeah.
said I'd been there before, and that's the only thing I can contribute it to because I've had other abductions that have absolutely terrified me. I've had some that aren't that bad, but
Mm.
when I was little, the first one I remember was 4, and I remember my mom put me to bed that night. I remember next thing you knew, I was on this ship. I wasn't asleep. She put me in bed, and I was laying there wide awake. I've always been able to sense things happen before they do, and I knew something was going to happen. And I remember being on the ship. There was 2 small grays and a third small gray that was off like in a little alcove off to my left. And that one felt very female to me. And she's the only one that talked to me. And then in that room, there was all of these bright light colored buttons, and they were like the size of the palm of your hand, and they were on the wall. And there was this little platform that jutted out from the wall. Everything was white, complete white, except the multicolored buttons. and it had what looked like what we now have as a laptop. Back then, we didn't have laptops. And so I was standing there, and in front of me was this arch door frame, and it had like little glyphs that were drawn all around the arch of the door. But when you looked through that door, there was what looked like a CAT scan machine. And back then, there were no CAT scan machines. It had the circular part, and then it had the table that went in it. And there was a man with blonde hair that was laying on the table.
Wow.
And there were two tall grays that were standing there, and they were looking at each other like they were mind speaking back and forth because they're all telepathic. And then over on the side of that room was another small gray, very similar to the one that was in the room I was in. And he had another panel of the lights. But I remember the one that felt female reaching her hand out, like she was almost like in the shadows. And she reached her hand out to try to touch me. And it was all gray skin, weird skin color, and very long fingers with like the bulbous knuckles, like an abnormal size knuckles.
Yeah.
And she had some kind of like a cloak or something. I mean, like fabric that was over her. And she reached out to touch me. And, like you said, I wasn't afraid. I don't know why I wasn't, other than they said I'd been there before. And I looked at her and I said, you are in so much trouble, because when my mom finds out I'm not home in bed, she is going to be so mad, and you don't want to even see my mom when she's mad. And they just kind of looked at me like, this precocious little kid, and I'm telling them off. And I walked around the room a little bit, and I didn't go into that room where the machine that looked like the CAT scan was. They never allowed me to go in there. I was standing like 2 feet before the door frame that had the glyphs around it. And then I ended up back at home, but I always knew they were around. I mean,
Yeah.
it's been on and off most of my life. A lot of them I don't remember. I remember being taken. I don't remember a lot of what was done. Some I do very clearly. I've had genetic testing done on me. I've had fetal implants done on me. Woke up with, very long fingered bruised handprints on the inside of my thighs and on my arms. There was one time they had taken me, and it was really creepy. These happened when I was awake. It wasn't like I fell asleep and had a bad dream. And for anybody that's been abducted, you can tell what they call a cover dream and an actual dream. These cover dreams that the ETs use are scattered, and they will bring people that you may not have seen since first grade or kindergarten into them for no reason. And they're just very scrambled, very busy, like you can't get a solid train of thought. And those are the cover dreams. The thing with them is when they try to insert people into your dream state that are not your people, and it's not a dream and it's actually them, they can imitate the looks, and they can somewhat imitate the movements, and they have every memory that you've ever had. They cannot imitate the voices. And when they do try to imitate the voices, they tend to not look at you. And it's very short sentences. It's not fluid like a conversation. And they've done that with me so many times. They did that one day or one night, and it looked like my grandmother that had passed away. And I thought that was so strange, because they were just there, and it was like she wanted me to follow her. And I did. And when I followed her, I ended up encountering another one. And that one looked more like an ant. It was white, and it had like a domed face, almost like you would see on an ant, but it didn't have antennas. And but it was pure white, and its body was pure white except for a black strip that was on its arm. And at that point, I saw it, and I know how crazy this sounds. It shot, literally, it looked like a wave of energy that came out of it at me. And I didn't realize back when that had actually happened, I knew how to do energy work, which has really saved me profusely on a lot of the encounters. And I just basically threw it back. And when I did, it just like was gone. I've had them come at me in the house. I had one, and again, I was wide awake. Pat gets up very early for work, so he's asleep before I am, and I don't sleep well at night.
No.
And I was sitting up in bed watching TV, and the next thing I know, there were 3 alien type beings at the end of my bed. And I went to go turn around and turn my head because I heard a noise next to me, and there was a taller one there. These did not look like the ones that I had seen on the craft when I was a little kid. These were much darker in color, and their faces were shaped differently. And they put, the only thing I can say to explain it is it was like an upside down colander, like you put pasta in, like that dome. And they put it on my head, but it had tentacles that hung down. And I was suddenly paralyzed. I could not move at all. The dogs were not reactive. Pat was not reactive. I couldn't move at all. And they put this on my head, and it was almost like it was a live thing because these tentacles were all slimy, and it was going all over my face, and it was wiggling all around, and I couldn't breathe. I literally couldn't breathe. And I started to panic. And I had, at that point, I had been doing energy work for years. I teach other people how to do energy work and to move energy and that kind of thing. And I thought, as I started to panic, I thought, you need to start practicing what you preach, chick, because you can't move anything in your body. When you're paralyzed like that, you literally can't move, but you can still move energy. You take it from within your body and you shoot it out in all directions. And that's what I had to take my mind off of what they were doing to me, it really terrified me because I couldn't breathe. And there was all this slimy stuff and these tentacles that were moving all over my face. And I just basically shot energy out from all parts of my body. When I did, it looked like a ripple effect, and they were gone in a matter of minutes, and they haven't come back, that particular group. But it's never stopped. I mean, I was out when I lived in Michigan. I live in South Carolina now. I used to live in Michigan, and hopefully I'm going back there soon. But I was out in the side yard. At that time, I was working, and I still do, but I mean, I was working with cryptids. And I went out every night and sat out in the woods with them. And I went outside. It was 10 o'clock at night. And I was talking to someone that worked very closely with the government. And he was letting me know about some things that were being done that were going to hurt the cryptids. And we were having this conversation, and it was dark out. It was like 10 o'clock. And I looked off to the side of my yard, and I saw this saucer shape, and it was like the color of lava, molten lava. And as you went down towards the bottom of it, it just got darker. And I saw it come down in the yard, and it was like maybe 4 or 5 feet off the ground. And then I have no memory after that. The next thing I knew, I was standing in the yard, and I was still holding my phone. And I was very disoriented, very groggy, like if you just had some type of surgery. And I'm looking at the phone, and I'm like, why am I out here in the yard? None of the cryptids were around, which was odd because usually if I was out, so were they. And I'm holding this phone. So I looked on the phone to see who I called last, and I saw his name. I called him. He says, hey, kiddo, where'd you go? I said, what just happened? And he said, well, I was talking to you, and then the phone died. He said, I just figured your battery went dead. He said, you okay? Now, anybody that's been abducted, a common thing, and I'm not going to say everybody has this happen, but a lot of people that I've talked to have, it's almost like inside your brain, you're very aware of what's going on, but your body is almost robotic. You go in autopilot, and you're non-reactive. And so he said, are you all right? And I'm like, yeah, I'm all right. And I got off the phone with him, and I walked in the house, and my kids were in the house. I was a single mom at the time. And I said to the kids, did everybody, shower, get snacks, and do homework? Yeah, Mom, we're good. And I said, I'm going to go lay down. So I went in, and I took a shower, and then I went and I laid down in bed. For 3 days, I was in this fog where in my mind, I could think about everything and remember them being taken and taking me and being put back. But I couldn't respond. I couldn't talk about it. My body was non-reactive. I was like void of all emotion. And that lasted for about 3 days. And I took the kids to school every morning.
Who actually took you when you were there?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but or was it cryptics or was it
No,
aliens?
it was the ETs. It was the ETs.
Was it the alien greys again?
I don't think these were grays. The ones that I remember, they were more of a whitish color, but they weren't like the tall whites. I don't remember ever seeing those like that. They were almost like a whitish cream color, and I never got to see their faces. I just saw them as they approached me.
And was it tall or small?
Pardon?
Was it tall?
No, I would say They were 4 to 5 feet in height. And I didn't remember that until after this 3-day period went by. I took the kids to school. I came home and I went up the front porch, which was the same porch that I'd went up after the abduction. And I walked in the house, I shut the door, and it was like somebody just flipped a switch. And I remembered seeing them coming towards me. There was 3 of them. I just started crying hysterically, shaking from head to toe. And it was just like all of a sudden it just wears off, and that's been my experience. Not all of them, with quite a few, is where the first couple of days your body is non-responsive. It's like you're on autopilot and you go through the motions of your life. But in your mind is remembering things. In your mind, it's almost like you're talking to yourself. So it wasn't shortly after that, I was at home. The kids were in bed. I was sitting on my bed. I was reading a book and watching TV. And it was like I felt something sucking me through the wall. I mean, it was very painful. And next thing I know, I'm being levitated up and there's a craft. And this one was smaller than the one that looked like lava. And it was saucer, but it had like a dome on it. And next to it, floating, was an ET. But then when you looked over at the saucer itself, you could see 3 of them in there, and they had the bulbous heads similar to the grays. The one that was floating out there, he had something over his head. I couldn't tell what his head looked like. And I'm floating. I'm terrified of heights. That will paralyze me in a heartbeat. And I'm sitting there pinching myself and slapping my arms and going, this can't be real. This has to be a dream. And I'm watching bruises being made on my arm that I'm doing to myself. And I'm like, okay, this is not a dream. And I look down and some of the cryptids that I work with were there. And I'm like, you guys do something. Like, somebody do something. And next thing I knew, back through that wall again, I got basically thrown onto my bed. And I did it. When it happened, it did it so hard, I fell backwards and hit my head on the back of the bed and the wall. I ended up at the doctor's office the next day, at a concussion. Wow. I mean, you're not going to have these physical things happen in a dream.
No.
It's just absolutely insane.
Just a message somewhere. Paranormal girl, hello. Just spotted live stream. Hi there. Nice to meet you. Right.
But
so right.
Yeah, this is just, it's continued. It never seems to end. And every time I think that I'm going to get a break from it, it doesn't happen. I mean, I've had one where I remember being on this table and it didn't look like a tall gray. It was grayish green in color and very heavy set, had very odd looking feet to me, almost like they were webbed. And he had me in this room and he had me laying down and he said he needed samples. And I said, I don't understand what you want. And I knew it was DNA. They've taken just an ungodly amount of DNA from me. And I remember I got up and I ran out of the room. And when I walked out, I knew I was on a ship, but when I walked out of that room, all of a sudden, everything looked like I was somewhere else. And I was trying to get away from them. And they brought me back into the room again. And I just kept fighting them, and like I said, the energy does help depending on which ones. I always say there's going to be a kind that it doesn't sap, but it does help. And I was back home afterwards and I had lots of marks on me. I get a lot of the triangular shaped marks all over my body. I had at one time, I had my children. I wasn't planning on having any more kids. And all of a sudden I started gaining weight and I'm thinking, this doesn't make any sense. Back then I was very, very thin. And I went to the doctor and he did a pelvic and he said, well, your uterus is the size of a 5-month fetus. And I said, that's impossible. My husband has had a vasectomy. I've never been with anybody but him. This is prior to Pat and I being married. And I said, this makes no sense to me. And he said, well, we're going to do a pregnancy test. He did the pregnancy test. He said, well, it's coming out negative. He said, but it doesn't change what's going on with your uterus. They tried 3 ultrasounds. Every time they did the ultrasound, there was a malfunction. They couldn't do the ultrasound. And by that time, I'm now wearing maternity clothes. And I looked pregnant. And I kept saying to everybody, I haven't been with anybody. You know, I don't know what this is about. I mean, I knew in the back of my head, I knew. And I woke up one day and my stomach was flat as a board. And years later, after Pat and I had gotten together, we were laying in bed one night and I looked over and there was this being there, and it was short and heavy set. And it called me mom. And I was like, what are you talking about? I thought I was dreaming. And she was there, or should I say it was a she? I don't know if it was a she or a he, but I kept saying it over and over again. And I hollered to Pat and he said, what's going on? And right as I said this, it's like she phased out. Like it was there 1 minute and then just not there the next. And I said, I wasn't asleep. Like I could see it. Like? It was very heavy set. The shape of the head was longer, but it was very heavy. There were wrinkles on it. There was wrinkles on the body. It was very grotesque looking. I don't know what it was, but I know that once I alerted Pat to something was there, and he could pick up that something had been in the room, but he didn't see it. And it literally just phased out. And the only reason I knew it was there to begin with is because it touched my arm.
Wow.
But then years later, I always had problems with PID, and the doctor couldn't understand why I kept having so many problems with pelvic inflammatory disease. And they ran all kinds of tests and they said, well, when you're done having kids, we're going to do a hysterectomy. I said, okay. So I finished having kids and I'm still in all this pain. It was bizarre. And they would do ultrasound after ultrasound. And they said they never saw one solid mass, but my uterus was full at all times. Whatever was going on in there, it was just enlarged at all times, but they couldn't find a mass. So I had a hysterectomy done. And afterwards, the doctor came in and he said, good news is we got everything out. He said, I don't really know why you made it as long as you did. And I said, well, what'd you find? He said, we have no idea what this is. He said, it was a substance that looked like chocolate pudding. And he said, your entire uterus was full of it. And he said, I don't know what this is. So he said, there was no masses. There was no tumors. The entire uterus was full of this. And he said, it looked just like chocolate pudding. And he said, we're going to send it out to a lab and see what it comes back. So I waited like 6 to 8 weeks and they got back in touch with them and they said they had no idea what it was. So they forwarded out to 4 other labs. They were supposed to be the top labs in the country. Nobody could ever identify what it was.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it's ridiculous. Trying to think, there's been so many incidents. Oh my goodness. And the UFOs, I mean, doesn't matter where I live, they show up. I think I sent you photos of them, didn't I?
That's right. Of course. Yeah.
Yeah, that was actually taken from my front porch. My son-in-law took it. He had walked outside that night. Him and my daughter are staying with us temporarily while they look for a house. And that was about a year ago. And the UFOs we don't get as worked up about them as maybe we should anymore because they're just all the time.
I know what you're saying.
And
I'm trying to send them onto this computer. I use this one upstairs. It's a different computer, and for some reason, they're
very clear. I mean, for a UFO photo, but he had seen it outside, and he hollered to Pat and I, and his wife and Pat and I were all out on the porch, and we're watching this thing, and it was very large, it was saucer shaped. But it had a band that went around it that was multicolored lights, and it released two different.
I've got them on here, but like I say, I couldn't send them. You know, I don't know why.
Right, yeah, I don't know. And
let me just show so people can see.
Yeah, that right there on the bottom left-hand corner, that's one of the things that came out of the one on the bottom right. There was another one that was bright red. And unfortunately, you can't really see the 2 top pictures. Those were a triangular shaped craft that was outside of my garage. And it was hovering above an open portal. And the portal had a head coming out. So the one on the top right, that was the actual, I enlarged it so that you could see it better. and it was an actual portal that, yeah, that's the red one that came out of the back end of the other one. And he went ahead and he set it to MUFON, which I personally would not have, but he sent it to MUFON. I honestly thought they would try to say it was something other than what we already knew it was, but they didn't. They came back and
Where's the
said,
video?
yeah, that's another one. Oh, yeah, that's the video. No, that's a different one. I have 2 videos. That's a different one. That one, the cryptids alerted me to. And so yeah. But that portal that was underneath that triangular shape, it had an actual head coming out, and it was the oblong head like you would see on traditional gray, and you can see the eyes. And that was actually captured on the security camera that we had at the time. I had a friend of mine that came to visit and was staying a few months with us, and he had, I think it was his car charger he had left in his car, but 4 o'clock in the morning he couldn't sleep, so he walked outside to get the car charger out of his car and turned around. There was a UFO above the house. You know, Pat's come home. He ran up to the party store one night and he came back. It was like 11 o'clock at night. There was one above the house. And my son-in-law had at one time went on Google Earth to see the top of the house. And in one section of the house that is directly over my bedroom looked like an emblem on the roof.
Wow.
Like it was marked.
What was it like?
It was triangles and weird glyph shapes. And we have gone back since then, and it's not showing up on Google Earth anymore, but it did for a short time. Now, when MUFON investigated the one where we had the one main one that released the 2 ships behind it, they came back and said they had checked and there was nothing else in the sky that night. And that as far as they were concerned, it was a class 1 sighting, that they felt pretty safe in saying that it was a UFO. They said it was not terrestrial, meaning not from here.
No.
But they don't stop. It comes and it comes and it comes. Now, last May, oh God, it's been a year ago now. I think there's been 2 abductions since, but I don't have a lot of memories of them. But last May, Pat and I were sitting on our bed. It was like 8, 9 o'clock. It wasn't like it was late. And this we have 2 windows in our bedroom, and this huge beam just went right through both of those windows onto the bed. And I had told Pat, I said, something's going to happen. I'm an empath. You know, I do energy work and I can read energies. And I told him, I said, something's going to happen. All day long, I was in this very angry, aggressive mood. And I kept walking around my house telling everybody, you guys, it's not you. I'm not mad at you at all. Something's getting ready to happen. I knew something was going to happen. I've been doing this for years. And we were sitting on the bed, and this bright light, like blinding white light, came right through both windows. And I looked at Pat and I said, they're back. And he says, well, I'm not going to go to bed. I said, I'm staying up. I'm not leaving you alone. And I said, you can't stop it. Okay. I have a better chance of blasting them with this energy stuff than you do. I said, you've got work tomorrow. I want you to go to bed because you can't do anything about it anyway. So he went to bed and I laid there. I was sitting up against the back of the wall watching TV. And the last I saw the clock, it was like 2 o'clock. I don't remember anything after that. I don't ever remember feeling tired. I woke up the next morning, and I have had government threats before. And I had several people that were involved with the government that said, you know, you need to keep a backup phone. You don't go anywhere alone. This. I said, okay. So I had 2 cell phones that were always next to my bed, as well as my tablet. They're there every night without fail. And my slippers are right next to the bed. I woke up, and you know how you get that feeling like you just had surgery and you've got that Propanol where you're still kind of groggy and out of it. So I woke up and I thought, God, where am I? What's going on? I reached over to grab my phone to see what time it was. Pat wasn't in bed. And I thought, oh, he must be at work. My cell phones weren't there. I got up, my slippers were gone. And I'm trying to stand up, and I'm like, I can't get my balance. And I saw one of the slippers was in the middle of the room going towards the door. And I thought, that makes no sense to me. But where are my cell phones? The tablet was there, but it was on the floor. And I'm thinking, this is crazy. So I tried to get up, and Pat came into the room and I said, are you here? I mean, what time is it? And he said, I haven't left for work yet. And he said, are you all right? I said, no, I don't think so. I'm groggy and I'm disoriented. Like, I don't know what went on last night, but something happened last night. And I said, I can't even find my phones. And he said, well, you got your phones. He said, they were in the bathroom. I said, what were they doing in the bathroom? Like, I've never in my lifetime have I ever put them in the bathroom. He said, I don't know. Well, the cases were damaged on them. And the one hasn't really worked well since. And as now I don't even use it. But there was damage done to the cases. And he said, I found your slipper in the other bathroom. And I said, that makes no sense. I said, one is out here in the middle of the floor. The other one's in there. And he looked at me and he said, look at what you're wearing. And I said, what are you talking about? I said, I'm wearing my pajamas. He said, no, you need to take a look at what you're wearing. And my top was on perfectly fine. My pajama bottoms were on inside out. And I know for a fact they were not on inside out when I went to bed because my allergies were bothering me and I had sneezed and I put the Kleenex in the pocket of my pajamas. When they're on inside out, you can't access the pocket. So I know for a fact they were not inside out. And the Kleenex was no longer in the pocket either, but it was on inside out. That entire day, I could hardly move. But the thing that really was concerning, as many abductions as I've had, this one terrified me more than the rest. I've had the missing time. That's happened so many times, I don't even count it anymore. And I've had where I remember the abductions, some of which are really terrifying. Some of them, now that I've learned how to do certain things in dream state, it's not as bad. I feel like I can at least, somewhat try to do something about it. This terrified me to my core. The next night, I wouldn't even, I have heart medicine I take at night. I wouldn't take my meds because I was afraid it would make me sleepy. I have never had, of all the abductions, where I was too afraid to go to sleep that night. That's never happened to me before. I wouldn't take my medication. I wouldn't go to sleep until daylight. Then I would lay down.
What scared you so much?
I don't know. That was, I did later find out, but at the time I did not know. So that it was like 2 days later, I was laying in bed and I do mind speak. I speak telepathically, not only with the ETs, but with the cryptids. I have since before I could talk. And I heard something say, watch the movie, The Answers. And I said, I've never heard of that, so I'm looking through all these streaming services and I finally find it. It's like $2.99 to rent it. I rent it. I still haven't seen it. I rented it. And in the first clip of it, it showed a woman there and this bright light that came through the window. When that happened, it just like rattled, everything changed. I remembered seeing 3 beings. They were black, that were probably 4.5 feet tall at the end of my bed. I have an armoire and all 3 were standing right there. I couldn't see any facial features. I couldn't see anything. It was like a black cutout, but it wasn't translucent. And then there was a bigger one that was like that came out of my bathroom. I have an ensuite bathroom to my bedroom. And when he came out, it turned its head towards me and it took its hand and it was just like it waved it across my floor. When it did, it looked like all these planets on my carpet, but everything was black. There was no colorations to them. There was just all these different sizes that looked like planets. I know they told me something. What they did, I can't remember that. The thing that was so concerning to me is, and this is so hard for people to understand, and I'm just going to say it the best way I can. Missing time does not frighten me in the least because what am I going to be afraid of? I don't even know what happened. It's just a blank. This was different. To begin with, when I saw these things, I felt nothing but love from them. Literally, I felt no fear. I felt love. But in that moment, after I saw them, I did not exist anymore, not anywhere. It wasn't missing time. I didn't exist in any plane, any galactics, any planet. I simply did not exist. And I can't even begin to tell you how terrifying it is. To feel like not just missing time, but that you never existed to begin with. And when I had woke up, it was like 6:30 in the morning. Pat was running late for work. And so that's why he was still there. And he was worried because he didn't know what had happened the night before me. I still get choked up and get teary-eyed when I think about it because missing time is, you know, what are you going to do? You don't know. How can you be afraid of it? You don't know what happened. But to have this feeling of not existing on any plane, any dimension, any planet is the most gut-wrenching thing that I can say I've ever experienced in my life. I mean, I've done battles with these things. I've been attacked by them. I've had good ones come for me. I've had bad ones come for me. Thank God that I do work with the cryptids because they're a great security system as far as alerting me. They don't get it all the time, but a lot of the times I get warned beforehand. So I tried to connect with these ones that showed up that night to find out why. Like, why would you do this? I had triangular shapes on me, which I usually do after an abduction. But I wanted to know, like, why? Why did I not exist? And they told me, they said that they had to do that. That was the only way to protect me because the bad ones were coming for me and I would have died.
Wow.
You know, and it's all due to this crazy thing that apparently is my life and I'm supposed to be part of, but that doesn't even matter. You know, the good ones want to help me and the bad ones want me dead. It's like having an X on my back that has been there since I was born. You know, I've had some that have come that have been absolutely terrifying, and nothing terrified me like not existing.
Just something to ask you about the cryptids. Something that I'd seen today, because I mean, we don't get as much over here, you know, Bigfoots and Sasquatch and what.
Yeah, you have them there because I work with people there, but yeah.
I know what you're saying, but we don't get them as, you know, like it's not the country's 1,000 miles by, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not.
So they're not having to encounter you as
we
much.
live on an island, you know, and all the trees are being cut down.
Yeah.
So we have some, mostly around Scotland. There's a few in Wales. I think somebody was talking to me about in the Midlands near Cannock Chase and other scatterings.
Yeah.
But something that somebody had posted today, which I was quite taken by, was it had said that there was like writings on some of the trees. And they could only put it down, and there was big, so that they knew it was a very big hand that had made these markings and put these wood signs down. And when you looked at them, it were all runic.
Yeah.
And I'd never come across that until today.
Oh, no, they actually, when you get down to the genetics with them, and again, you know, I've been working with them since I was big enough to walk around.
Yeah.
They, not only are they all telepathic like the ETs, but they can speak, they have their own language, they can speak our language, they have their own alphabet. And a lot of them with these alphabets, they look like glyphs. Now, they used to do tree drawings for me all the time, and I have photos. Yeah.
Yeah, no, these weren't hieroglyphs. These were definite runes.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, they do. And they all have different meanings for them, just like they would for us. I mean, it's all absolutely true. And you tend to find them where there's UFO activity, you're going to find the cryptids because, you know, we haven't got the genetics to confirm this. But like when it comes to the Sasquatch, they are a human hybrid. And I worked with the study with Dr. Melba Ketchum, and the mitochondrial side is human. The nuclear side, which is the dad, is unknown because you have to compare it in GenBank, which will tell you everything. GenBank doesn't have everything in it. The government has it all. And so there's only certain things that are allowed to be in there. I asked them, because I used to go out and sit with them every night. I mean, they still coming up looking in the windows and hanging out all night anyway. But when I was in Michigan, I was out there every night for several hours, like 2-3 o'clock in the morning or whatever. And I would sit out there with them. And I asked them, I said, what are you? Because clearly you're not an animal. Okay. There's no way. Now they have more paranormal abilities. Their paranormal abilities match the ETs. And
But
so
what
I
did they
said, what
say?
are you?
Where are they from originally to you?
They were created. They were created. A lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them are created from ETs. Like if you go and you read Project Serpo, they will talk to you about the dogmen. But then you've got several variations. The government's created their own set of cryptids as well, but they all have an ET base to them. It's an ET base, human base, and then whatever they find to mix with it. And so what ends up happening is you find a lot of they have paranormal abilities, they just do. But you find a lot of the ETs and the UFOs and everything around them. And, I get people all the time that say, oh, no, they're just an animal. And I haven't noticed anything like that. And I'm like, just wait till you are fully engulfed in this and you have groups that you're working with. Now, I had ETs come at me probably before, I don't know, maybe the same time as the cryptids, because I was a toddler. I mean, and I've always had the same things happen. But they'll do the tree drawings like that. Absolutely. It's like people are always saying, are the Sasquatch taking people in the national parks? And I'm not going to say they haven't. Neither have, or the dogmen haven't. But what I will say this is they need to be more worried about the ETs in the national parks than they do the cryptids. The cryptids have, they're like us. There's good ones and bad ones. Their cultures are different than ours. So they do things for different reasons than ours, where we may think they're doing it for one reason, they're doing it for another. Doesn't necessarily mean to be mean or aggressive. It's just they're a type of people. They're just not our type of people.
No.
But the UFOs they follow them. I've watched these things going in and out of portals. I mean, I've got pictures of an ET that was up in my tree here. We had one time where my daughter, they were trying to get to me and it wasn't getting them anywhere. And they went after my daughter. And by the time it was all over, they're not coming back anytime soon. But, you've got good and bad and everything. Not every alien is bad. I will say that. They're not all bad.
I mean, talking about, the missing people in these areas, forests and what have you.
There was a group.
Say again, sorry?
There was some in Arizona that went missing, and I had someone, because I can do remote viewing, and somebody had contacted me and said, listen, we're missing a lot of people.
Yeah.
And they do have Sasquatch around there, but they weren't the ones responsible for it. They actually, the ETs had them, and they had them in underground tunnels that were
I've been doing some
underground.
research on missing people in my country, and something astounding. I think it was about 11 years ago. I was talking on the BBC radio about missing people and how many missing people there was. And this is about 11 years ago. When I was talking to the researcher, the host on the BBC radio show, I think there was 180,000 people missing each year from the United Kingdom.
Yep.
This year, the numbers have gone up to 350,000 people.
There is supposed to be this battle that's supposed to be fought on this planet, and it's not. Everybody's like, oh, it's a big fight for the planet. It's really not. There's various reasons for it. One of which is just the right to live here. And there's more ET activity now than I've ever noticed in my lifetime. Like you can't get away from them. You just can't. No. It's unbelievable. I work with people all over the world and help educate them on the cryptids. I help them, learn to communicate with them. And there was somebody that I had started helping that wasn't involved with cryptids, but had been abducted his whole life. And he was absolutely terrified. And I worked with them for a while, and I got the abductions to stop. And he contacted me 2 years ago, and he said, listen, I got taken. And I said, what do you mean you got taken? Like, we had to stop for the last 7 years. And he said, no, these were good. These felt nothing but love. And I said, what happened? And he said, I'm supposed to give you a message. And I said, what? And he said, You are the only person I've ever talked to about this, about the abduction. He said, there isn't anybody else. And they told me that the woman that you talked to, you have to give this message to. And I said, what's the message? And they wanted me to know how they take possession of our people. And they wanted me to go public with it. But the thing is, people don't want to know. I mean, some do, but predominantly they don't, because it absolutely terrifies them. This process, and they do. I've been attacked by things that looked human that were not. They
Just a little question here. We've got Paranormal Girl. Hi again. Who says, hang on, let me just put my gigs on. Look into the missing people in, is it Brecon? Do you mean Brecon as in the Brecon Beacons in mid Wales? Hi again. Yeah, Paranormal Girl. Do you mean the Brecon Beacons? Ah, well, yeah, I know a lot about the Brecon Beacons and what goes on there. And yeah, but overall in the UK itself, if you look at the UK itself, we had, it must have been last year, we had 350,000 missing people. And
it's heartbreaking.
That is a worry for any country to have so many people missing. That is one big problem. No one in the country, in the government, are talking about it. The police aren't talking about it. I had a Facebook user. I need to get something sorted with my Facebook, because I've just realised I think I might have a problem with my Facebook there. But anyway, yeah, so we have got a hell of a lot of people going missing, not only in America, in England,
right?
You know, maybe around the world, in Europe and Russia and over in Australia. It would sound,
now,
by the people that have spoken to me over the years, there's a big problem.
Yeah, there is. But if you go back even 100 years, okay, longer than that, the governments, and I'm not calling out just one, the governments signed treaties with extraterrestrial beings to abduct us in exchange for technology. It's a fact. You can Google it to find it.
Yeah,
like
I mean, the thing is, I've heard about this from Eisenhower.
Yeah. And what they did when they did this, they wanted the technology. They got the technology, but inside of that, you can actually go on the internet and pull up the actual agreement that was originally signed. Yeah. But there was another president prior to that did the same thing. But part of the agreement was that they would never disclose the ETs existed. But when they did this, part of the agreement was not only would they never disclose it, but the people that would be taken would never be harmed. They would not remember anything. Well, the ones that they dealt with, and it never said clearly what race that they were dealing with, they weren't good. And they just did whatever the heck they wanted to do. And it's been that way ever since. But you're talking about not just one kind. That's the other thing. People are like, well, how many kinds are there? I don't know. I'm being honest. I have no clue. But what I will tell you is there are so many different kinds that visit this planet. It's astronomical. It's like everybody talks about rakes. Okay. I've encountered them before. I had 2 of them try to kill me. And I believe that those are an ET. I don't think they're any type of cryptid. I believe that they're an ET. And, you've got all these things, but the ETs are at the bottom of all of it. No, J-Rod was supposed to be really good. J-Rod was supposed to be helpful. There are some, there's absolutely some ETs that are wonderful. And they have helped us from stopping nuclear weapons to helping stop with CERN. They've helped numerous times. You cannot say anything, I don't care what it is all bad or all good, because it would be incorrect. These ones that took me, that terrified me so badly, I felt nothing but love from them. Nothing.
Well, have you ever heard of something, and this is scientific evaluation? If you actually have a look, there is something called the Stockholm Syndrome. where
Hmm.
people who have been placed under, these circumstances, like being abducted, taken prisoner, taken hostage, where
Hmm.
it's the brain's sort of like way of coming to terms, but by getting to know them and
Hmm.
getting to try to understand them. But what it is really, it's a fail-safe system for the brain to keep you
Yeah.
alive, right? Yeah, and this is
Well, yeah.
why this you get this in hostile relationships, with husbands and boyfriends and girlfriends as well, beating up on the partners, and
Yeah, it's the way the brain
it's this
copes.
mechanism to stay alive, and this is why you feel this compassion and love, but the truth of the matter is that's in here to keep you alive, and the
Yeah.
truth is what you're going through you should not have been put through. I've had it
Yeah.
myself. I've gone through the same thing as an abductee and a super soldier, fighting many races, including races on our planet from different
I get
countries.
Pat and I get pulled out at night all the time. And, it's really important that people understand when you are in a certain dream state, you are in as much danger as you are when you're awake. It is every bit as real as when you are
Oh
awake.
yeah,
There's a dream state where you have random dreams, but then there's dream state where you are actively doing things in it. I've been pulled out to fight battles. I got my arm broken in them. I wake up in the morning, I've got a broken arm. How do you explain that to the ER doctor? You can't. But Pat and I wake up, he wakes up, he's got busted lips or a nosebleed, or,
oh
I've
yeah,
got handprints all, we get pulled out to fight all the time. And that was another thing I was going to say. People need to become more aware that when they are in this dream state, they are just as capable of defending themselves as when they are awake. You are not helpless.
no,
You may feel
no,
helpless, but you are not. Everything with the ETs as well as the cryptids is frequency, vibration, and energy. That's how they do everything they do. We can do that. We just have to know that we can, and you need to know how to tap into it. And it's not easy. It takes practice, but you can. I've had to. I had one time that they had me so terrified that night, and I knew it was real. And I was so terrified I wouldn't come out from under my blankets. I called a good friend of mine. I'm like, just stay on the phone and talk to me till this passes because I'm absolutely terrified. And I got thinking about it that day, and I thought, you know what? This is ridiculous. I teach people how to move energy. And you can zap with it, you can blow up with it, you can throw it.
yeah,
And when you are in that dream state position, you can use it to protect yourself. And you can take it from your body and put it around you like a shield. The good stuff can still get through it, but the bad stuff, it's like a wet person getting out of a shower and grabbing a hot wire fence that's on. It literally blows them up and disintegrates them. And it happens. I know people that can do it. I can do it. Does that
mm,
mean I do it all the time? Not always, because sometimes you get in these moments when it happens that you don't think about it.
no,
Had I not thought about it when I had them next to my bed with that thing on top of my head, I don't know what would have happened. They wanted information. I don't know the information that they think I know. I have been attacked so many times in my life for this, whatever this information is that they think I have. I don't know what it is. I don't even know how to access what it is. And then you have governments that have ET technology that can invade you in dream state.
yeah,
I had that happen one night. I had gone to bed. Next thing I knew, I was in a basement, concrete walls. There was a military personnel had my arms between my or back behind my back, and I watched a general come down these steps, and he kept yelling at me, "Don't you will not tell him the information." And I said, "I don't know what information you're talking about." And I couldn't get free. And they put a needle in the side of my neck, and it was just like, when you're passing out when they give you gas at the hospital. And I remember falling to the ground after the needle went in my neck and scratching my cheek. When I got up that morning, I was groggy, just like I had had surgery. There was a needle mark in my neck with dried blood on it, and I had scratches all over my cheek from where I'd hit the pavement. Now, you're not going to get that if it didn't happen. If it was just a dream, you're not going to have physical things there. And I did. So the next night I said to Pat, I said, they always talk about how the Nordics are so great. Where the heck were the Nordics when all this was going on? I don't believe Nordics are good,
Well,
because it was,
this is a big thing, sort of like, personally, I've been taken and been put into a military unit as a super soldier. I don't see any of them as good. I
yep.
don't, sort of like, I fight because I've got to.
That's what I do too. The following night, when I went to sleep, I was back in that room again. There were 3 Nordics. Yeah, it is in the DNA. I know that. It's awful.
Well, but everybody says this, but that's not for sure, because the thing is,
No, they use it.
what you've got to think of is this, right? Yeah. Everybody talks about the DNA because it's just come out, it's new. But what if there's something in us what you can't see, just like DNA couldn't be seen until 2 scientists found it? What
Right.
happens if it isn't DNA?
I
What
think
happens
that
if it's something else? Nobody can say it's DNA. No one. No one can say it's that.
Well, the DNA does play a part in it, because
you can assume.
They can't, right, but they can't they're not able to reproduce it, which seems to be the biggest issue. And that, I think, is as far as our DNA goes. As far as, I don't think everybody, I get all the time, well, you're not Rh negative. So what? I'm O positive. It's a universal blood type. They can make whatever they want. Now, I was told by ETs there are several different blood types. What is yours, did you say? Sorry? I said, I'm O positive. Right, and everybody claims that they're only going to bother you if you're Rh negative.
Like, where has this BS come from about this blood again? What it is, we'll get somebody who's more of an author, and they'll come out with bilge, and just because books sell, you get all the other idiots spewing out the bilge that's being put forward.
Yeah, I don't believe
Nobody
it's just
knows
DNA.
about if it's the blood. Nobody knows.
There's a lot more to it than the DNA. And
blood.
Like
there's a lot more than the blood as well.
Excuse me. When I saw the Nordics that night, I remember, I'm so sorry.
I'm the same myself.
They that night that they showed up, there was 1 in front and 2 in back, and they had on blue and gold robes, and the one got right in front of my face and is doing this and looking at me like that, which is typical in mind speak with the ETs. They'll do that a lot. So I know they were saying something to me, but I have no memory what it was. So the next night they showed up again, only this one they had the same 3 that were there the first night, but then they brought another one along, and it had jet black hair but looked exactly like them. And I thought,
just agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're saying your aura could be something to do with it. Totally
we all have abilities. Whether or not we realize we do, or we know how to tap into them, we still have them. We can do very much what they can. We just have never been taught, and we've never known we've had them, because the powers that be tell us we don't, and they don't exist. And if you claim they exist, you're crazy. And that's nuts. I have helped thousands and thousands of people with abilities that I have, and I'm happy to do it. Am I the all-powerful Oz? Oh, God, no, never. There's no experts in this. It's just people trying to get by and do what they can with what they got. Yeah. Whatever it is that they think I know, I have no idea how to get to it. I've had my life threatened. I've had things come to my door. Yeah, I've been abducted. All because of this information. I have no clue what it is. I don't even wouldn't even begin to know what it is that they claim I have in my head. I've got an implant in this ear, and whenever they're around, I start getting pain in the ear. I get lightheaded, and it drains, and it just drains and drains and drains. And I've had the doctor. With
your implant in your ear, I always have a problem. It sounds like bees buzzing every so often when they're about. And it makes you sick.
It does.
It makes you physically sick. Spent
the last 3 days where I was so dizzy, even sitting on the bed, I felt like I was on a tilt-a-whirl at the fair.
Yeah.
And I've gone to the doctor's office, and I'm very fortunate that the doctor that I have believes in this whole stuff. And I told her, I said, listen, I said, I know it's in there. The cryptids have told me it's in there. They can't get it out. I can't get it out. It's not down inside the ear. It's up towards the top of it. And I said, at times it hurts like crazy. And I said, maybe I just have an ear infection. And she said, well, how often does this? And I'm like 3 or 4, 5, 6 times a month. And it only lasts for a certain amount of time. And then it's perfectly fine again. And she looked at me and looked at my ear, and she said, if you had ear infections that often to the point that you've got all this pus and blood coming out of your ear, there would be scar tissue. She said, your ear looks like it's never had an infection in it. So she wrote me a script for antibiotic drops. She said, this isn't going to stop them from coming after you. She said, but it will keep it from getting infected. So she wrote me a script
for it. For years, the antibiotic ear drops.
Yeah. And she
By
said,
the way, we're going to have to end it here because we've gone over an hour. But we'll have to come back again and have you on the show again.
Absolutely.
Because it's been a fantastic show. Lots of people interested in what you've got to say.
Oh, good.
Really good. And a lot of things. We'll have to talk about the cryptids more.
They all tie into it. But people just need to know that they are not powerless in these abductions. There are ways to try to protect yourself, at least to some point. Oh, you're very welcome, my friend. I'm so glad. We all got to work together in this stuff.
Thanks for all your support, everybody who's contacted us tonight and listened to the show and taken part. Thank you very much for contacting. And thank you very much again, Robin.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me. And thank you to everybody that listened.
You're quite welcome, Robin. So I will say thank you very much to everybody again. And I will say a big good night to everybody.